Tuesday, September 22nd meeting of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission to order. And before we call the roll, which I have been doing in the absence of our administrator, I'd like to welcome her back. Denise Jeunesse is an integral part of our organization. She has been a part of it before we were a part of it. She is to some degree the heart and soul of this operation, and we missed you dearly.
Oh, I missed you.
While
Thank
you were
so
gone.
much.
And we are very, 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 very happy to have you back.
I'm very pleased to be back.
Thank you so much. Now you can call the roll.
No problem. Commissioner Amari,
Yes.
Commissioner Billups,
Present.
Commissioner Opman,
Present.
Commissioner Caldwell,
Present.
Commissioner Carter,
Here.
Commissioner, let's see. Did I overlook? Commissioner Evans. Okay, Commissioner Evans not here. Commissioner, I did Billups. Okay, we have a quorum.
And Birch.
Oh, wait a minute.
And Lum.
Wow, you guys are.
Rex and I are just always here.
But Ramwale, Lum, and Commissioner Birch.
No, Ramlawi was called.
Okay, Commissioner Birch, I have you, and Council Member Lum.
Yeah, here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like we have Lieutenant Dortch kind of lurking in the background.
Yes, we do.
It's City Attorney Slay is with us as well.
As well, yes.
All right. Okay. So I think the agenda is in order. No amendments, correct?
You know, in terms of reports, I mean, our committee, the outreach committee, we met and I think we do have a report about what we did, right, Andre? DeAndre?
Okay.
Yes.
So that's on there. That's good. Okay. So given that, is there a motion to approve the August 25th minutes? My understanding is that everybody has gotten a chance to read them.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of 25th of August.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And it looks like we have mostly old business. Last night, the city voted on the Ann Arbor Police Officers Association's new contract. And if I'm not mistaken, that was part of the consent agenda. That was CA 22, right? Wasn't pulled out. Okay, so they voted on that as part of the consent agenda. Police officers have yet to take a vote on that. We expect that will happen shortly. One of the things that we wanted to comment on that is that we do have an expectation and a strong desire to be included in the conversation about ending arbitration for termination. That is a topic that was brought to the table by ICPOC. It is one in which we have a strong interest, and since it's not an official bargaining session, we just want to make clear that we are interested in participating in that process. We have received some conflicting information about the intent of the city in terms of that, so we just wanted to be clear and say that certainly we do want to be included in that process. There have been many police oversight related decisions that have been made where we were not able to come to the table, or where we were invited very late into the process, and we do not want this to be another of those. So next, Commissioner Chidoro Hargraves has an update on no, you know what? I just skipped the public forum because I just did that. And I should not have done that. So I will stop talking now. Denise,
Let's see if we
do we know
have.
anyone who's called in for the public forum? Because we'd really rather hear from them than me.
Okay. Okay, can they talk? Let me see.
Oh, I I can see caller ending in 552, but it looks like you're muted.
Yes. Can you unmute?
I think we have to hit like
Star 6.
Mhm.
So caller 552, can you unmute yourself?
The host has to, I believe.
Oh, well,
I don't
wait.
have anyone muted.
I think we have to hit like *6 or *9.
9.
Maybe try *9.
Okay, let's see.
You know what, too, Denise, on the panel at the bottom, you might be able to hit that red phone line thing and maybe that will unmute them too.
Okay, hold on. No, okay. Here. Okay, she's not, or he's not muted. Not on my end anymore.
I believe the caller has to hit *9.
Sorry, is it *9 or *6? One's to raise your hand and one is to unmute. And I thought
*9.
okay.
She's still, or the person is still muted. The caller's still muted. I'm asked to unmute.
As we're working through these technical difficulties, is it possible just to chime in a little bit on the conversation the chair just had with the commission?
Wait.
I did not mean to raise my hand.
There we go.
Thank you for your patience, caller. Please go ahead.
Okay, I did not mean to raise my hand.
Oh, did you have a comment in public forum?
I did not.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
Do you have another person waiting, Denise?
I have the 1510, but that's it.
Okay, so not 552. Can you bring 1510 up?
Okay, hold on.
As we're working through these technical difficulties, is it possible just to chime in a little bit on the conversation the chair just
Okay, they're ringing, but they should be able to come in.
Here we go. Thank you for your patience, caller. Please go ahead.
Okay, I did not
Just
mean to raise
hearing
my hand.
our
That's
meeting
the
notes.
TV we're hearing through the phone of the person.
They need to turn off their TV.
Yeah.
Eliminate that.
For the other
552.
person too.
Okay. 552, could you go back and mute yourself again? I think we can hear your TV. I have 1510.
They can speak, but they need to turn off their TV. Otherwise,
They didn't want to speak, Jane. This person didn't want to speak. It's the
Okay.
next one that wants to speak. So Denise, are you able to bring up the next person?
I have everyone. Nope, that person's gone now, so.
All
Yeah.
right, technical difficulties, we apologize. We will likely have some time for public comment at the end. So if you were disconnected due to technical difficulties, we apologize. Please call back. Councilmember Rumlauer, you had comments about the AAPOA?
Yeah, you had said the commission and the leadership expressed interest in being in the conversation with the binding disciplinary arbitration, the part of this contract that it has been agreed to be later talked about and looked at for future contracts and reform. I would maybe perhaps suggest to, and I'm just here to advise perhaps just to make a formal motion, pass a formal motion asking the Budget and Labor Committee or asking the city administrator to be a part of that committee formally. I think it's important to formalize that now early on and rather than just have it in passing in the conversation, because it may not be as effective.
How complicated does that language have to be?
Not very complicated at all, one sentence.
If I may chime in on this.
Mhm.
So this was discussed, Councilmember Ramlally and I are on the Budget and Labor Committee. That's the committee that reviews contracts and negotiations before they're presented to council for consideration. And the way to engage ICPOC on police contracts, on bargaining agreements, was discussed. And I don't think that that ICPOC would be, okay, how can I word this? I think, you know, for ICPOC to be involved, the ICPOC needs to request that a designated representative or two, if you will, can be consulted and on collective bargaining agreements as they're being developed in conjunction with, I'm just weighing this, but in conjunction with the Budget and Labor Committee. Again, that's the first group that is engaged on these contracts before they go to council for recommendation. And there was agreement that ICPOC should be, you know, that ICPOC should be engaged. And with this recent contract, ICPOC provided helpful guidance on all these non-economic items, and the negotiation reflected and was guided by the guidance that ICPOC provided. So everybody recognized that that was valuable. You had a lot of value add, and it's just the way that you will be, you know, sort of brought into the process. But I appreciate Councilmember Mai bringing this up. I do also think maybe a formal recommendation or request would be helpful, just to get it, you know.
I'm trying to write one right this second so that we can vote on it.
Okay.
So do what
And
do you know?
this may, I'm sorry to interrupt. This, you perhaps have time to craft that. It doesn't need to be done on the floor here tonight.
Right.
I think it could be brought to the next council or next ICPOC meeting, next scheduled ICPOC meeting.
Right.
I don't think this is extremely time sensitive.
No,
So
it's
you
not.
don't think that they're going to be having these conversations in the near future? Like,
Well, I mean, the union still hasn't voted on the contract.
Right. And
they have 30 days to do that, right? Is that right? From the time you
I
guys
think
did
there's a
that?
date been set, but yes, there is also a statutory amount of time that needs to be honored.
Okay, but this is a separate process outside of that. And
Correct.
so, and I know this isn't an official bargaining interaction, which is why we're allowed to participate in it at the table.
Right.
At least
This is
we
a
were
three-year,
advised.
it is a 3-year contract that was just approved. So, right, it's not that time sensitive. The only thing that really wasn't addressed, and this new contract, if it's approved, as you know, includes a provision to create a separate bargaining process to explore changes to binding arbitration for disciplinary matters. And it was stated, and this is our understanding and what was approved, and its language to address this was included in the contract, that this bargaining process will commence when the new contract is ratified by both parties. So that's really the next thing on the horizon, vis-a-vis, you know, this particular AAPOA contract, again, which is now, if approved, effective until December 31st, 2022. But that is something that, right, that your guidance on binding arbitration should incorporate.
My question is really if it takes a 1-sentence request to Budget and Labor to be included in that, my preference
that
would
would
be
work.
would be
I
to
would
get
send
it.
I would send it to the city administrator along
Yeah.
with budget and labor. The city administrator really needs to be on that one.
CC, we still don't have an HR director, so CC, the assistant city administrator, right?
I did see that job posting, so we are looking forward to having an HR director. Okay, however, if we can get a one sentence thing done that we can vote on today, then we're
Or
happy to
next-
do
at
that.
the next meeting. yeah.
Well, in the attachments is the presentation that was given to council by John Fournier, and I'm sure you have it. We're going to go over it here.
We
And
saw it individually, we saw it in small groups.
So it's like the 1, 2, 3, fourth page, the fourth slide in that attachment of the presentation. You have the tentative agreement slide with binding arbitration for discipline. And in that, it talks about the union and the city agreed to form a committee
Right.
to work on a proposal to reform binding disciplinary arbitration after the current TA is adopted. Simply just including yourself in a way, in that sense, that you want to be a part of that is all you really would request. Now, whether it would be granted or what shape that comes in is to be learned, but that language already exists for if people want to use that.
Got it. I can do that. And I can work on that and we can come back to this in a moment. I know, Anand, I'm sorry, Commissioner Amiri, you had your hand up.
You know, I was wondering now, the negotiation are done with the union and it's waiting for voting. So the changes that can be included, is this for future negotiation?
Yeah, the current contract is
It's done.
is locked
It's done for 2020,
Well, they have
if
to vote
it's
on it.
approved.
the end of 22. So
Correct.
any change, any request for the involvement of the commission will be for negotiation that will happen for the future,
Correct.
right?
But there,
Yeah, I mean, who knows? They could come to an agreement in the meantime as well. It may not have to wait till the end of this one.
Okay. So they're still open for changes, you mean?
Not this current
No.
contract, no.
Yeah,
This-
that's why I'm
You're
wondering.
not going to be able to reopen this one.
That's
back
what
up.
I'm wondering. If we're not being able to open this one, what is the point in adding a sentence today rather than look at it and in a more detailed what the future will
Because
look
there
like
was,
for the commission involvement in the negotiation?
So two things. One is that, believe it or not, the negotiation for the next contract. So the next thing that happens is the command officer's contract, so that we have to work on. And then it won't be very long before they start negotiating this next contract. And unlike the current process, we would like to be included at the beginning of that process. And
Yes.
so what we don't want is for them to start having these meetings without us, and we don't want any rationale for that to happen.
Okay.
And so I am just being safe rather than sorry, because I know everyone in the city is tired of me saying, wow, you guys keep forgetting we exist.
and I would say, this is the big police officers union, AAPOA. There are two other police unions, one for the deputy police chief, and that's two people. And that expires December 31st, 2020. And then the AAPPA, which is the police professional assistance contract, and that expires December 31st, 2021. Just to make you aware that there are two other police contracts. They're very small, relatively speaking.
Right. And so Francis and I already have, actually we have both of those current contracts, and we have had to start reviewing them. But the process for reviewing the next iteration of the largest contract will start in the next couple of months, or in the next few months anyway.
so if I can interject, I apologize. To answer Commissioner Anand's question, this was an unresolved matter in the current contract with disciplinary arbitration.
Mhm.
It was an unresolved issue, so the two parties have agreed to continue to talk about it. And
Okay.
talking about it,
Okay.
we would like ICPOC to be a part of that conversation as to that issue, to that one particular issue. That's all that we're talking about.
Okay, what you're saying, it really makes sense. Okay, thank you, Ali.
And I would just say it was unresolved, but the contract does include language about this. It again includes this provision that we will create a separate bargaining process to explore changes to binding arbitration. That is in the contract language.
So before conversations on that start, we want to make sure there is no reason that we would not be included.
Sure.
All right, so I have, I don't think I need a whereas and a resolve, but, you know, whereas the union and the city agreed to form a committee to work on a proposal to reform binding disciplinary arbitration after the current TA tentative agreement is adopted. 3 designated representatives from the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission would like to participate in the conversations with the city, on the committee with the city and the union regarding the end of arbitration for termination. Actually, hold on, I can revise that. Regarding binding disciplinary arbitration.
We can ask for 3 members to be present. I think it might be problematic. It might get pushback from others in the organization as being too many chiefs, too many cooks in the kitchen, perhaps, when it comes to talking about that issue. So
they'll come back and tell me too.
I would caution against that.
Right.
Caution against asking for 3?
You can ask for 3, but I don't know if you're going to get 3. I would just, you can ask for 3, but I doubt you're going to get 3.
Setting the bar very high, I think. But
We were setting the bar really high when we asked for the end of arbitration for termination. We set the bar really high on that.
I think there's only 3 members on the current committee that decides the disciplinary action. So there's only 3 that so I will just leave it there. I mean, I would just have one, perhaps one. You want to be honest? I would just have
Yeah,
one.
no, I don't think it's
back to the commission.
I don't think it makes sense for us to have one. I think there is an enhanced value in having 2 people who are always witness to what happens with the other person. I think there are a lot of good reasons for those kinds of controls. I don't think there's any other party to this that only sends one person. And so that to me would be problematic. And I would be very concerned about why they could only accommodate one of us.
That's a completely reasonable and fair argument.
All right. And I'm sure if I ask for 3, they'll say, no, there's only 3 of us. You can't have the same numbers we have. You can only have 2, and that's totally fine. But I think we should, however the commission can decide.
I agree.
Which way?
3 or up to 3. If you want to change the language to that.
Doing it?
Yeah.
Any other feedback? I'll read it again. You guys can let me know, and then we can vote and move on.
We need to have one of us make a motion for that.
Oh, do you want me to read it again though? Is it, or do you want me to share my screen, or what do you want me to do? Okay. Hold on. The union and the city agreed from this. How about the city of Ann Arbor? Hold on. The union and the city of Ann Arbor agreed to form a committee to work on a proposal to reform binding disciplinary arbitration after the current tentative agreement is adopted. Therefore, up to 3 designated representatives from the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission would like to participate on the committee with the city and the union regarding binding disciplinary arbitration.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
Can I just check, sorry, is there a reason why we would want to say presuming that the ETA has agreed as opposed to when it is? I don't know if it makes any difference.
Sure. If you, well, they won't have a committee. They won't have a committee if if the tentative agreement is not adopted. So I guess it would be a moot point.
And I think perhaps if I can say, I would just maybe say, something with the effect of respectfully request or resolve or something that there rather than therefore.
Right.
I can do a whereas and a resolved.
Yeah, you can,
My sleep.
resolve clause or request, respectfully
Okay.
request a demand of sorts rather than.
Did you say respectfully request or we demand to be?
No, I'm just saying in a demand of sorts, but either resolved or request, respectfully request.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. So that's a semicolon now, not a period. Whereas the union and the city of Ann Arbor agreed to form a committee to work on a proposal to reform binding disciplinary arbitration after the current tentative agreement is adopted. Resolved, up to 3 designated representatives from the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission would like to respectfully request to participate on the committee with the city and the union regarding binding disciplinary arbitration. That work?
That works.
No revisions?
I have a question. Is participation meaning that, the ICPOC is not going to be there all the time or in every meeting? So let's decide, make it clear in all the meetings. So we want to make it clear that we are there in all the steps.
So we need a better verb than participate is what you're saying.
Is there any way of sending that real quick with an email? Is there a chance to send it to or?
You want me to just share my screen?
Right. Mm-hmm. We usually have the city clerk.
On the
I can do it.
participation thing, in the room when these talks occur, no one on the Budget and Labor Committee participates. So no council members participate. It's just, and Ms. Carter could chime in here. She knows how this works. The union has their representatives, perhaps their attorney, and the city has their professional representatives, not the elected officials in the room. And I believe, obviously
with attorneys are present on both sides.
Right. That is not a meeting where you're going to have ICOC committee members or council members who serve on this Budget and Labor Committee. They go off, they negotiate, then they bring, and they go into these negotiations with the advice that and the guidance that the ICPOC representatives will provide. Similarly with the Budget and Labor Committee, then they come back, report out, go back and forth. And but the participation in the actual negotiation, face-to-face meetings with the union, I'll just be real honest. I mean, ICPOC representatives and council members, it's not appropriate and that will not happen.
We understand that we're not a party to that negotiation, so we can't do that.
Everybody understood that.
Aren't we referring to this committee?
Correct.
Formed. So
that's still a negotiation. Again, I don't know.
Right.
Because it was made clear to us on the Budget and Labor Committee, we're not in that room when these negotiations are occurring.
Right, okay? Right. But I think what Mohammed is referring to is the committee to discuss the binding disciplinary arbitration. So so we agree that we would like to be involved in those discussions of what comes about as we go through this current contract.
Perhaps Ms. Slay could weigh in on this, just the poll, participation, to provide some clarity on that, how that would work, or the chief.
Yeah, Don Fournier told us it was not an arbitration session. Right. It was not a negotiation session. And so that there was no legal reason why we should not be there. But Attorney Slay can weigh in.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time unmuting.
Sorry.
It's okay. I actually, since, I'm not the labor representative, I'm not sure to what extent there's a break or a caucus where maybe it would be appropriate at that time for ICPOC to share any concerns that they have. That definitely sounds like that would be the appropriate measure. And maybe even at that point, you guys could ask for an individual caucus with city representatives as well. So if they're presenting something that is not what you feel is in the best interest of the community or the representatives that you guys are serving, then maybe that's an opportunity you guys can ask for your own caucus. But I love the request, so we'll give it a shot. See what they say.
Thank you. Okay, so Mohammed's point is that we need perhaps a different verb than participate. Is that correct?
Could be to be included.
To be included on the committee?
Yeah, it's one verb versus participate, because to include this means that you are part of that versus somebody who is participating, maybe passerby kind of thing. So, but again, the verb is open for discussion or modification.
Well, we should always be thinking about inclusion, right?
Correct.
Anything else?
And I just wonder if we could just change some words around, so I haven't slept much, but after resolve, if it could then say, we would like to respectfully request. It just would, I think, flow better if after the word resolve, using the words we would like to respectfully request up to 3 designated representatives from ICPOC to.
How about this? Resolved, the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission would like to respectfully request up to 3 designated representatives be included.
That's fine. Anything, it just feels a little clunky otherwise. Not my, I'm a non-voting member.
You're wordsmithing though.
I'm just tired, just sleep deprived.
Well, the definition to participate is to be involved with others in doing something or to take part in activity or event with others. So
Ms. Carter had her hand raised.
Well, I was just going to say that the wording would like to request, you're requesting. So why do you put in the would like to? You're requesting that, and I'm not
respectfully requests. No,
yeah.
it's gone. The more concise, the better. The Oversight Commission respectfully requests.
Yes.
It's getting cleaner. Up to 3 designated representatives participate on the committee, be included on the committee. If participate has more than just inclusion, we can go with participate. I am not wedded to any particular verb.
Any linguist or lawyer can.
I know I would call my son, who is a linguist, but.
I like participate rather than include. If you're include, or maybe include and participate, put both of them in there. But you could be included if you're in the room, but you really want to be a part of the discussion. So
be included in and participate on.
There you go.
Consulted, included, and participate in.
Hey.
Sorry, it was an English major. Pre-unemployment.
3 designated representatives be consulted, included in, and participate on the committee.
In, yeah.
It is grammatically correct, but any other?
I'm hesitant to say anything, but what? Who's doing that designating? Is my question when I hear the word designated.
All right, so up to 3 representatives. Boom. Yeah. Thanks, Jude. I feel like everyone's had a piece in this so far. DeAndre, maybe you don't like some of my commas. I don't know. Denise, can you make me the host so I can share my screen? Because I feel like that might be just slightly.
Sure, let's see.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Oh, wait, hold on, Denise. Hold on. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you have to make me the host.
Okay.
I don't know why you can't make me co-host.
Okay, I can make you co-host. Which one?
There you go. I think I should be able to share my screen if I am a co-host.
Sure.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. All
There
right.
you go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Welcome.
And okay, can you guys all see that?
Yes.
All right. So is that a little bit easier to navigate if you're looking at it?
Shouldn't we say 3 representatives from the commission? I mean, so it's pretty clear who we're talking about.
Oh yeah, there'll be a loophole. They'll appoint 3 other people.
Right, right.
Thank you.
Not that bad.
Oh yeah.
Do you need included in or included is good? You know, the third line to be commission to be consulted, included, and participate.
It was included in and participate on, but that was before consulted was there. So now it seems
Included and participate.
way too extra.
Consulted, included, and participate on the committee.
I think we can remove the and say to participate. Consulted and included to participate on the committee. So included, consulted and included. Remove the comma between consulted and included, and add and remove the second and say to participate.
I don't think we can do that. Request, you're saying request, that we request to participate.
Yeah. So those things are like forming, and then why we are forming that? To participate.
On the commission be consulted and included
To
and
participate. To participate.
No.
Yeah, I think and is better.
And. Included to participate doesn't make a lot, I think. And well, included to participate. Included and participate.
Yeah, I think it was better like that. If we're saying there are 3 different things. Request that the commission.
I don't know, though, with all due respect, what is the difference between included and participate?
Sarah said that participate was bigger than inclusion. It included inclusion among other things.
So you could just send an email saying, here's, we're updating you on these negotiations. I think that I agree with Stephanie that participation is a stronger word. I would keep both.
My comment had been
included on an email list. I mean, that's.
Yeah. I mean, included can, yeah.
Okay.
You're not really at the table necessarily.
Okay.
Actively, engaged.
I'm happy to leave it. I'm happy to ditch it, but it feels like we should keep participate.
Yes.
Yes.
Strong. You want it to be strong.
All right. Are we good?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a motion to make such a resolution? Not such a resolution, this one in particular.
Yes.
You want to put it forth and then have it seconded.
Putting it forth.
I move for the resolution requesting 3 representatives from the commission be included to participate on the committee with the city and the unions.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Oh,
So why don't we move to the update on police data collection and analysis? Chief Cox, I know you and Commissioner Vice Chair Tadoro Hargraves have been working on this. Francis, do you want to take it away?
Yes, so we did meet, myself, Chair Jackson, representatives of PD, and we, and this was in response, I should start, this was in response to a public forum question that was raised by Joe in our last meeting. He then forwarded an email, which included this great example of a dashboard used by the Sacramento Police Department, which they have on their website, of a lot of data and numbers and statistics and so on. So we met with police department leadership and discussed where we keep that data currently, we meaning the Ann Arbor community as a collective, how the police go about obtaining that data from officers, where it's kept, how it's gathered, and so on. And so as we know right now, we do not have one of those dashboards, but we are looking to have one of those put together. And we're looking forward to working with the department over the next 6 months to establish a dashboard that's best for the Ann Arbor community. You know, I myself went into the meeting thinking that I'd like to see this dashboard not only be informative as to the raw data numbers, but also educational as far as what's in those data numbers. So that's what we will be working with the department over the next, like I said, 6 months to get that up and running, and the dashboard will live on the police department's webpage, so that people know to go there to find the information. So that's where we're at. Yes.
I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand electronically, but how current will that data be? How often will it be updated? Do you have any idea on that?
That'll be established once we have a good understanding of how long it takes to get that data together, and who is going to be the person or persons who will be updating that information. Right now, there's the department is working on establishing who those individuals or one individual will be. Right now, there's no keeper of data, so we need to get that taken care of first.
So it's more about having the personnel to do the work, or are we talking there are statutory issues that prevent us, or are we just talking about personnel?
Right now, we're just talking about personnel and gathering the data together. It currently is kept in a variety of forms.
Thank you.
Lee, you're on mute, or you're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
Oh my goodness.
I have my hand up. I would like to just follow on to Ali. Thank you, Francis, and thank you, Chief Cox.
Okay.
This sounds like this dashboard will be a great tool. Have you talked about? It sounds like the data that you'd like to incorporate in the dashboard. Have you talked about the key metrics? It sounds like it exists, but the work will be I don't know, compiling it and administering it, if you will.
Yep.
Who have you talked about the specific metrics that you would like to incorporate in this dashboard?
That's part of the process over the next 6 months of what that's going to be. Like we said, right now it's a personnel thing. So we'd like to know who's going to be in charge of the data and analyzing the data, and we'd like them to be involved in this process. Right now we have data that's collected via digitally via the computers in the cars. And then there's also data that's collected by the officers filling out forms. So the idea is, how do we, first of all, collect the data in one place? And what does that mean then at that point? And then we can determine what analysis will be done with that data, how it'll be done, and then how it'll be presented.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Sounds like we're reinventing the wheel in some respects. I imagine a lot of this exists already, and it's just.
Where do you think it
Not
exists?
in one
I mean,
place.
it should be these these metrics that we're talking about. And again, I don't know what you're mining for, but it just seems like
So
I don't know
where-
if Chief Cox can tell us or follow up later whether we have a lot of information that's already plugged and plugged and we are there, and we just need to plug it in, or we got to go and mine it and create these metrics.
Am I still
Yeah.
muted?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I think the part of the issue is we have data in different places, as our Francis was talking about. And the issue is some of it needs to be electronic because there's forms. And I think a lot of the data that you're looking for, particularly regarding officers and statistics and numbers, has to do with data that's not collected in a retrievable way because it's never been asked before. And so we have to, capture all of these things, which already exist. We do have it, but we have to either put it electronically or get the mechanisms wherever the data lies to talk to each other so we can retrieve it routinely for a dashboard. And we have a position, the police department has a position that's been open for a little bit, and that we're trying to hire for that right now. And we're in the process. It's almost completed to get someone to help us with the data. And then once that person's in place, then their main and primary job is actually to help us retrieve all these things and bring all that data together so we can, report out on it more accurately and maybe give other forms of statistics that we currently don't do in a more transparent way.
For example, can you give me example of the data you're collecting? Are you talking about how many people in Ann Arbor, how many calls you get a day to go someplace? Are you talking about how many times you stop people for traffic violation and the background of these people? Are they men, women? I'm not sure. You're talking about data, but I'm not sure what is in the data. What data, what does it include?
And that's exactly the issue, what you're bringing forward is that it includes a lot of different things. It could be the fact is we capture use of force data, but some portions of that use of force data is just on paper. It's not electronic and it's not counted in that way. We capture tons of statistics and different forms of measure, but we don't always report out statistically on what that stuff is because it's not put in any kind of database. And so, if you really want to do a deeper dive into data, if you want to do a deeper dive into what this stuff means, you really need to have a lot more data than I mean, we carry it, we keep it, but we don't have it in a mechanism that can report out or capture all the different
Not
ways.
accessible easily, you mean?
That's right. Absolutely.
I
not
want
easily.
to see how many police stops happened in the last year and who are the people who were stopped, and we're looking about race and gender and age and where. I need to find it in one place. Is that what we're saying?
Mm-hmm.
That is what we're saying.
Other data.
I just want to
amongst other things. Yes.
Among other things, I'm just giving one as an example. I just want to be clear. I understand what's going on.
Yeah, and so an example that Joe mentioned in his information that he forwarded was use of force numbers. And we actually collect more stuff under our use of force numbers than many other departments do. So, if they have apples in their basket, we have apples and bananas in ours. So that kind of stuff should be explained in the dashboard when we're explaining our numbers. And that all needs to be collected and formulated. I'm sorry, Stephanie had her hand up too.
I just have a question, and maybe this is not the place to put this in. But listening to NPR not long ago, I heard a report, which I have not been able to find, that in Washtenaw County, Black arrestees are charged more seriously, generally with felonies, than white people who are arrested for generally the same offense. And I'm wondering, I know from working in the prosecutor's office that a lot of the what's charged depends on what the police officer asks for. And so I'm just wondering, when you talk about data, is there a way to capture what charges the officers are asking for when they present a case to the prosecutor for authorization, and break that down into the type of charge and the race and other factors for the person who was arrested? I just also saw a study from the Brennan Foundation about the effect, the economic effect of a criminal conviction, whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, on a lifetime of earnings. And so that the whole community, the family, and therefore the community, suffers economically. So there's a whole lot that depends, or that comes out of what charge is brought. So all that to say, is that some data that we could possibly collect?
I just wrote that down.
I can share, Vice Chair, if you're interested.
Yeah, if you have the answer right now, that's fine.
I do. So in the fall of 2011, the prosecutor's office and the Ann Arbor Police Department went to digital warrant review and request. So that system is maintained by the county prosecutor's office. It's not necessarily our data to mine or to share. Of course, it would be available by FOIA. What we are not going to get an accurate reading on is that they only list one charge, even if they are requesting 10. So the request will be either for a violent felony, a non-violent felony, a violent misdemeanor, a non-violent misdemeanor, a sexual assault or domestic violence. And it's kind of classified into those categories. And it might list one charge, not all of the charges. That's really going to be up to the reviewing assistant prosecutor as to what he or she feels is appropriate. So it's not, we used to have these blue sheets that came over and the officers would kind of list every single crime they could think of that they were interested in pursuing.
Right.
But really, they're just kind of going over under these classifications with one charge listed now.
So it would take a deeper dive into the facts of each charge authorized. Okay, thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Can I just follow up to that? Is there any kind of, you said there's just one charge listed. Is there any sort of rubric on how that one charge is picked? Is it the most severe charge that's picked? Is it anybody, or who gets to pick one?
It is selected by the police. It'd be the most serious charge that's requested unless there's an overarching theme of domestic violence. So there may be gun charges and a bank robbery, but at the same time, in that same fact pattern, there was an incident of domestic abuse. It goes into the domestic abuse. That kind of trumps everything that and sexual assault and any crimes against a child. So you may have a very serious crime with coupled with a misdemeanor, but then in that case, the misdemeanor would win out if it's domestic related.
Thanks.
Sure.
Okay. Hope I didn't take us off on a tangent.
No, I think that's it, though. I think that that was a good conversation, and there's definitely ideas of what kind of information or data we want to be talking about over the next 6 months.
So that, can you hear me now?
Barely.
I'm very low.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Now I'm probably screaming at you guys. So we know that there has been a recent report, and I haven't seen the raw data yet, that compares people with similar, if not identical, convictions, and looks at how they were sent, the sentences that they received, right? And that came from Washtenaw County. And so I think there is a question about that. And then I'll send everybody a link to the Brennan Center report that talks about the lost earnings and the consequences on the community when somebody gets imprisoned, whether they're jailed or whether they actually serve time in prison or whatever. But I actually think those are some of the questions that we should be asking at a high level. We should be asking about the disparities in arrests, and disparities in charges. On average, do African Americans get 15 charges as opposed to 2 for people? Are we always adding on resisting and obstructing for African Americans? When you look at body cam footage, is it that when somebody talks back to an officer and they're Black, that's resisting and obstructing? Or, if you're a person being arrested of some other ethnicity, you have to darn near punch a police officer in the face before you get that charge, right? And I think those are the kinds of things that we should be thinking about, as well as reviewing the cases. I think it would be really good to start thinking about knowing what's happening and then working on preventing some of those things in the first place, which we can't do if we don't know what's happening. So for whatever reason, we have to figure out what's happening first, and data collection is central to that. I don't think we're reinventing the wheel at all. We have not had public facing data about the police department before. That's entirely new. The public wants to know some data on what's going on. We know that the county is starting to do that as well. That's an expectation that people have, that they want to know how they're being policed in their community. And so I think it's an important thing to do. I think it's a productive thing to do. We know that there's got to be some work done before they can even get accurate data in there, but to commit to trying to get it out there then means that people will start working on how to get that data out there. And then we can think about, well, maybe some of this needs to be digitized going in so that everyone isn't having to take things off legal pads and put it in a system somewhere. And so I think it's an important thing to do. And this did stem from some thoughts, some conversations that we've all had about some of these very same issues, but also then a person coming to our public forum and saying, hey, I want to see this stuff. And then us saying, why can't we see the stuff? And then engaging with the chief to find out what it would take to see that stuff and what kinds of things they'd like to add. And so, this has been a conversation in the works that Vice Chair Tadora Hargraves has been working on for some time. I'm sure it will evolve. But we have to start somewhere. And so I think it's important to get started and to try to get some accurate data out there to the degree that we're able, because that hasn't been done before here. And it's a thing that people deserve. It is a thing that taxpayers pay for. Commissioner Othman.
I think what I'd like to do is we understand and know the disparities in terms of the system treating people of color versus others. When you look at the data, it's almost goes in parallel with the COVID-19. You have 12-13% of the community is the people of color, yet the COVID is 40%. You look at the jail, we have 12% and 40% of the people are people of color. So what we need is this an issue? This is something that we have to also work on educating, training, getting people who are experts in these topics, and include that as part of the police training and police education. And I don't know whether or not there is anything like that. Maybe the chief can fill us on that. If there's anything that's going on for police education, or if it's not there, it should be there. It should be included. Because if we don't understand the people we serve, this is the outcome that we're going to come up with.
Agreed.
Councilwoman Lum has her hand up.
Yeah, just a follow on quickly on that suggestion from Mohammed, that when you create this dashboard, schedule, whatever form it's going to take, you might want to include a column that that indicates what your identified goal is, or you know, percentage, whatever, you know, a number in relation to the stats that you're you know, because as you said, this is going to be an education tool, and I presume, you know, so you're going to roll out these metrics on various things that it sounds like exist but not in one place, and you're going to want to refine, and then just have a goal for these various categories, I suppose, if it's appropriate on that particular metric.
Yeah, I
Chief?
think,
Oh,
sorry.
Chief had his hand up.
I'm lowering my hand. Sorry.
I don't see anyone with a hand up now.
Yeah, so I just want to just say absolutely, these are the kind of conversations that we probably should have. But I also also want to say that these are pretty big conversations, and there's people who are getting PhDs throughout the country trying to figure out what some of this data means, other than the obvious where it might be racism. There's poverty factors, there's educational level factors, there's educational level of parents factors, there's gender factors. There's a whole lot of factors, and the police might be one of them, but they're not the only one. So I just implore you all, as we go further and we start to look at this stuff, that we include other factors as well, because this topic is not as simple as sometimes folks make it out to be. That's the only thing I ask. Thanks.
Commissioner Carter?
I agree with the chief, but one day I'll confess that as a grown, college educated, middle class Black woman, I was almost arrested for resisting and obstructing an Ann Arbor police officer. And the circumstances were totally inappropriate for the officer. And so, in terms of the things that we can deal with, as I'm sort of getting my feet wet here on the commission, but I think maybe we can't affect the educational system or the poverty level. But if we can look at what our police are doing for and to us, I think that's an important step.
Vice Chair Todoro Hargrave?
I think these are all good things, and this is something that you should all feel free continuing to send me emails, or I can continue to send updates as we go through this process with the police department in establishing how this data does get collected and analyzed and put out to the public and so on. I think that this is we have 6 months, so we have lots of time to work on it.
Commissioner Hoffman?
Yeah, the intention of this is really to open discussion and free discussion, and all our purpose is really to establish a productive, positive interactions between the community and the police department. We are not blaming this or blaming that. We are a resultant of the circumstances that we are placed in, sometimes not because of choice, but because this is how things are for members of our community. What we want is really want the community to trust the police and what they are doing, and they are doing a great job. I'm not saying that they are not, but we want to make this relationship more positive, where people really relate to the individuals, not to be afraid of them, or not to cause some kind of situations where now we end up with really a bad outcome.
Agreed?
Agreed.
I think when we're thinking about police issues, we have to think about them in terms of public health, in terms of healthy communities. It is a piece of it. It's an important piece of it. It's not the only piece of it. But I do think we have to, I think we all, if we don't, we need to understand the many, many factors that contribute to where we are and how we are. And I do think that we can work on the things that we're charged with. And one of those, you know, and certainly, you know, we have a charge to look at the police. And what we want is for things that are considered, you know, the public health crisis in one community are not considered a law enforcement issue in a community of color. And so we want there to be some sort of equality about the way things in which are handled, even when those are the very same things that are happening. And that's something that we can look at as we understand that many of these factors, that the things that land people in the path of the police are many and varied. Because what we know is that it's not just education, it's not just healthcare, it's not just racism. And when we talk about racism, we need to talk about that on many different kinds of levels. And so there is a lot to unpack there. We're not going to solve all of it in our lifetimes, probably. But we do need to take a stab on it where we are, right here in Ann Arbor with this police department. And it does, you know, behoove us to have broad conversations with public health people and others who can contribute to this conversation. But we do need to think about who's getting arrested and what they're getting charged with too. And so we have to do all of that, which is the story of this commission, right? We got to do a lot of different things. If we can move on to the work plan, because I actually think the biggest thing that we have to talk about is yet to come. I think, Francis, help me out here. The thing that we wanted to say about the work plan is that we are going to ask Denise to start going through the open projects ideas list that we've made and start checking in with people about what they're doing, how they want to do it. And then setting up everybody needs to set up some timelines for themselves about what they want to accomplish by when, and we'll let Denise start sort of keeping track of who should be doing what by when. We are little by little setting up more and more processes such that things can run, you know, automatically, and we'll have regular kinds of things that we're doing. But I do want to make sure that everybody kind of checks in with that Google Doc, make sure that you're on there for what you want to do. And then we might need to have some small group conversations about how you want to do what you want to do that's on there. It's really important that everybody engage in the things that they're passionate about. I think across all of us, we have varied interests and skill sets and training. And so I think it'll be important for us to tackle that and to do that. We want to make sure the distribution of work gets spread out, right? It's not going to be sustainable, probably for me and Francis to work the way that we've been working. We now have Denise back, so we know that a lot of that load has been lifted, but we want to make sure everybody else is doing enough work so that they feel engaged and that you're doing the kinds of things that you need to do to feel like you are making a difference here, because each of you is so talented, and we have these individual conversations about what drives you to do this work, and we want to make sure that that's getting done. Complaints, any comments about that? Sorry. Okay, complaints. Do you want to lead this one, Francis?
Sure, if that works. I think that we had a recent review with PD. So we've so far for 2020, we have reviewed 7 complaints. And we are going to put together letters from ICPOC that'll go out with regard to those. We have established a process that we're in a pretty good space with. And then we also, while Denise was gone, started receiving complaints directly to ICPOC. So that's a good thing, because that is, that's new. So we're looking at seeing those, get more and more of those. And that process is going to be solidified also. I'm going to be kind of codifying them and writing them up this week. And I'll get that out to everybody so we see those, and we'll get into a regular flow of getting additional commissioners also involved in the review process. So, but it's moving along pretty well now, and we're working well with Lieutenant Cervantes, who is our new professional standards lieutenant who came on board a few months ago.
Commissioner Mary.
Yeah, I have a question. We have 7 complaints. You reviewed 7 complaints, or the total complaints are 7? And how many the commission got directly?
So we reviewed 7. I believe there's an additional 8 that have come in that PD is still working on. So they're basically pending. We received 5, and a couple of them are not with regard to police behavior. So the ones that get forwarded to professional standards are ones with regard to police behavior in the public, like within the community. So if it's a policy complaint, like somebody sends us something and says, we think the officers should be doing XYZ instead of ABC, that actually stays with us as a commission. We review it and have then more of a policy discussion, either among ourselves and then with PD, or however we choose, depending on what it is. So I believe, off the top of my head, I think 2 or 3 of them were police behavior related. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head.
So we're talking about 15 altogether.
Yep.
In the last 9 months. And when you say we reviewed them, you just looked at the report, at the complaints, or you investigate how the police did them? I'm not sure what we reviewed them include.
We went through each complaint. We looked at their findings. We reviewed body cam footage on several of them. And so we were able to kind of take the process from beginning to end just on those few that we finished. So a couple we didn't have to see body cam footage, but there were several where we did need to see it, and we found and so we were able to view the body cam footage and make some assessments from having watched it.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, but because before, if I remember it correct, like when we started before COVID, I mean, everything's changed since COVID. We were assigned, everybody was assigned certain cases to look at, like we were a committee of 3, and this is your responsibility. But then that stopped, and I didn't know what was happening. So who's reviewing them now?
So the ones that we finished with was just me, Francis, and Bonnie. And we're gonna change that up. And so I know some people have interest in doing that kind of review. Some people do not. And we are able to do some of that remotely now. So there was a while when we couldn't do any of that because of COVID. And so we also didn't get very many complaints because of COVID and different kind of police activity and different kind of citizen activity. And so now that is starting up again, we can do that remotely. And so we can, we will change the way we're going to do it. Muhammad is going to start doing it as well. If you're interested in, if anyone else is interested in starting to watch body cam footage and review complaints, shoot me a very quick email and just say I'm in. We will probably, we may not have those rotating teams anymore. I think there were a few problems with that system. But the more complaints you review in this way, the better expertise you get. So it's really good if several people want to do that over and over again. That will be excellent.
Okay, I have one more question and then I'm done. Any of these complaints were related to the like demonstrations or rallies that were happening in Ann Arbor because of, no?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope.
All right, that's good.
Okay. So now we need to turn it over to Commissioners Birch and Walton, who are going to talk about the public safety resolution. Would you like me to share my screen and put your document up?
That works.
Okay. Un momento. Hold on. We need to change the view. Just one page.
So while Lisa's pulling that up, if you all recall at the last meeting, this has been brought up in a few meetings, and most recently, Jude and I were tasked with sort of pulling the big themes, ideas from the discussion that was happening at the last ICPOC meeting to see sort of where folks were, what they were thinking about this, and what was sent to you earlier and what's in the doc that Lisa is showing is that Jude and I described sort of the overview, like the history behind this resolution, and sort of this very large theme that we pulled out and that was brought up in the last commission meeting about being tasked with a couple of new things. Jude, should we just walk right through the doc, or do folks have any specific questions? I don't know if everyone got the time to read it today.
Why don't you just take us through it briefly, understanding that people can read as we go along if they haven't read it already.
Okay.
But because I know you want to get to the substantive part of the.
Yeah. So yeah, the overview is pretty self-explanatory. It's that bolded, however, where I think there's a pivot or a shift in that in a subsequent council meeting about the resolution and further review by the commission, it's clear that our scope of work can be broadened. The scope of work is referring to what the ICPOC commission is tasked with. So we briefly went over the summary of what we currently do, which was in this resolution by the mayor, speaking to our oversight, our training, our relationship, with the community, advocating on behalf of community members, everything we've done to cultivate a partnership with Chief Cox in order to have clear lines of communication, and that we already, we as in Lisa and Francis, put together this annual report summarizing all the above. And sort of that pivot or the however piece is that this resolution, we feel and was shared by you all, that we were tasked by the mayor to dig a little deeper, to really investigate, speak to what public safety looks like in Ann Arbor, how can it be improved, what's working, what's not working, how can it be better, how is it funded? And so there are pieces to that as far as working through what it would look like to create such a report. How is that capacity shared amongst people, and kind of what they already are or are not doing? Looking at the AAPD budget, which is something we currently don't do, but is in the resolution as something that we should do. As well as also forming that relationship with the police unions in order to be at the table in conversations with them. Case in point, earlier in today's meeting, speaking to want to be involved in that arbitration process, which is something I had raised with John Fournier. So all of it to say, we hope folks are eager, excited, enthusiastic about this. We think, moving forward, this does make sense to sort of live under the umbrella that is ICPOC. Yeah, Jude, am I leaving anything out? Anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered it pretty broadly. I mean, the idea, it does seem to lead to a lot of overlap and inefficiencies if there is a separate task force or a separate group that is working through things, especially as some of the things listed were things we are already tasked with doing by the ordinance, some are not. And that just doesn't seem to be the effort that our community needs right now, right? Kind of unraveling that or piecing that back out again. I do think though that as Sarah mentioned, it will, taking on more means that there would need to be a shift in a couple of different ways. One being internal, just who is working on what and making sure, It's almost a shame we had complaints in between work plan and this, because I think one segued very nicely into the other, right? Is looking at that and dividing those things. But that also, you know, we know that, you know, it's not like we're sitting around looking for things to do or sitting around looking for things to keep admin, but, you know, kind of tasks flowing. We have tons of that already, and especially with more data things coming online and things, so that we would be needing additional resources to do this. And so that's why it seemed to make sense to look at that as being, you know, if we're going to do this, let's put the real authority behind ICPOC for it and change the ordinance. You know, we already run into situations where we're allowed to do certain things because there is a city ordinance that put us in place to do them. And part of my concern is if a lot of these new tasks, for instance, aren't included in the same way, that could really weaken our ability to do them. And so that's why we came up with this as being the proposed way forward.
So open to feedback, thoughts, comments,
So-
concerns, questions.
So could you maybe talk about some of the ways, so commissioners, actually, lots of things that you guys said at the last meeting were really incorporated to this. And one of them in particular, Commissioner Carter said, you know, she looked at that kind of public safety resolution and she saw an opportunity. And I think that really resonated with a lot of people, particularly Commissioners Birch and Walton, as they were working on this. And can you guys talk, could you expand a little bit more on the ways in which you saw, okay, so maybe the mayor is asking us to do some new things. Like, I know he pointed out that, you know, they could allocate, I just flashed the actual, his resolution on the screen for a second accidentally, but he mentioned, you know, additional resources in there for staffing or whatever. And I know we had a conversation about that last time, but could you guys talk a little bit about some of the things where you thought there was an opportunity or an opening to do more than what we had currently been doing, for example?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, right out the gate, even the title of this resolution is Resolution to Request that ICPOC lead an in-depth multi-stakeholder and data-driven review of public safety services and provide City Council with reports and recommendations. So, I mean, right out the gate, I think it's a big opening, and Jude really brought it to light, and as well as Commissioner Carter, that's an opening. That's, I think, you know, being asked to provide sort of this policy review and this opportunity to impact the way that public safety looks like in Ann Arbor, sort of henceforth, is pretty big, because I think our work right now is very much in the weeds of like day to day, just making it, just sort of, you know, living in this society where trust between the community, specifically when thinking about the Black and brown people in Ann Arbor and their relationship with the police, is fractured. And so a lot of what we do right now is that day-to-day, how do we build that community? How do we build that trust in order to move forward and have better, safer, more inclusive, equitable policing in Ann Arbor? And so I think this sort of opportunity to engage with what that looks like on like a larger scale is definitely high up there.
For me, I think that there's a little bit sort of between the lines as well, in terms of we were being asked to do something, which to me inherently implies there's something new or different here, right? This you wouldn't bring forward a resolution if it was just carry on.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So and to my mind, part of it is, you know, we the way the ordinance is constructed, we are very much a review committee,
yes,
a review board.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an invitation and an opportunity to be far more proactive than that, in my mind, and really in terms of rather just reviewing what exists or reviewing complaints, really taking a step forward and saying, this is what we think it should be.
Yeah.
To me, you know, kind of yeah.
Which I think is going to be more resources, advocacy, and just this sort of, what does he call it?
What?
this invitation to look at the public safety services. Because I think before.
Oh, I have it. Do you want me to put it on the screen?
Oh, I have it like pulled up alongside of it.
Oh, I can do that.
Okay.
Oh, trust me, I can have them both going at the same time.
Is that what you were getting at, Lisa?
This is the original one from June 15th. Is that what you wanted?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. And then, so,
Yeah.
you know, the request that we, with, you know, focus on AAPD's budget was a new ask.
Mm-hmm. Which is what
so,
the commissioners, a lot of people made note of in the last meeting, budget.
And, you know, we were happy to see that, you know, city administrator, you know, can include, you know, this in the budget. We know that around the country, oversight budgets, as they are for police departments, budgets are really just an itemization of what you are committed to do.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of indicate what you should be doing. Commissioner, I'm sorry, I think Council Member Ramlawi had his hand up, and then Commissioner Miri.
Yes.
Thank you. You know, I appreciate the work that's been put into this, and the thoughts obviously are consistent. I just caution against the framing this commission necessarily as a review board. I think it's a part of this commission's work, but I would caution on, you know, limiting ourselves, and there's enough challenges without us putting limits on what we can set out to do, and not just be a reactionary body.
I think she meant that as opposed to like the structure of or either of oversight boards in the country are either independent monitors, they are investigative, or they're review. So she wasn't limiting us to just doing that.
Yeah, and I don't think
in the technical sense of the kind of.
Right, and I don't think we fit cleanly into any of those definitions. And I think that that's part of it. And as part of it for me is the idea where we can really kind of restate to the community clearly, you know, this is what we are. So yeah, I hear you. I don't want to unnecessarily limit us in any way. I also don't want to overstate what we currently have authority to do or not.
I appreciate that, and in no way I was trying to, you know, I don't know. I'll leave where it's at. But the other thing I want to talk about is the police budget, and the resolution calls for the commission to review the city of Ann Arbor's police budget. And I've talked to the city administrator, and this is something I think is low-hanging fruit in the sense that we can get the resources from the city applied to the commission, since there's so much work for this commission to do. As someone just recently stated, there's not a lack of work to be done, but I think getting those resources from the city applied, and looking at that again, it's what many have called for, is you know, many people, it doesn't have council support, calling, you know, for defunding the police, you know, and I think that's just gonna really, in my position, shut the conversation down for many that need to be involved. So I don't necessarily advocate to go to that level, but in terms of reforming and restructuring and applying our resources in different areas, I'm sure the police force would love some help in assisting that, because they've become the catch-all for all of society's issues now. Even our mask wearing enforcement is like, okay, call 911. It's like, really? That's what you're telling us for masking? So I apologize. I get off the point, and our time is limited, but just to reiterate the fact that offer exists, and a resource that we should be tapping into there is to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think really we take the opportunity to examine the AAPD budget certainly as a way of looking at what things do they deem important and asking questions about that. Is there, why are you buying 57 tanks? For example, they're not doing that, hypothetically, and what things seem to be important to you. So with the few dollars that every department has, they allocate those resources on things that they find to be important. And so for us to examine the budget means that we get a chance to have conversations about what they thought was important, because that's what a budget is. That's what our budget is. That's what the police budget is. It's an indication of what they find to be important and necessary, not sufficient, but and so I think that is the way that we are entering into those conversations and the examination of their budget. We've not looked at their budget before, not sat down with the police department and done that. So we will do that with an eye to understanding what kinds of things they thought were important and asking questions about that. And they have been very open to that process and, and open to talking about where their priorities are. So
can I just clarify one thing with that as well? Is the actual original resolution didn't just call to look at the police budget. It called to look at the city's budget with a particular focus on the police. So again, that's another of those steps of opportunity and invitation. It wasn't just see what the police can do with their budget better. It was, I believe it's the fourth resolved on that page. It's review the city's budget, which again has that implication in it of, as Councilmember was just saying, of having appropriate things done by appropriate areas. So this is not that, things like that. Again, it's another one of the things to me that opened up the scope.
Councilmember Lum.
Thanks. I think this is a very thoughtful, well-developed statement substantively, and I like the form. I just sent a couple minor, not substantive suggestions, and thanks, Sarah, you already acknowledged it. But I really think, and again, remember, this resolution was never passed. It was just tabled and no action was taken on it. But I think you're providing a very thoughtful response. I think it's great that you have included the statement that you would like and need additional budgetary resources, perhaps some increased level of staffing support, because to do all the things contemplated in that resolution, you absolutely do need staffing support and funding to do this work. But I just want to really thank you for your work on this. I think it's a very thoughtful statement, and you're taking a real high level approach. And I think, just in terms of the city budget, I think that's a huge, massive expectation. It takes quite a while to understand the city's budget, and unless you're willing to, I just don't think that's a reasonable expectation. I think it's actually, you're going to be spending a lot of time getting to understand, and that's where you can be real service to the city, the police department budget. And in that budget, you need to understand, what, it's because it's not all for, and I mentioned this at the last month's meeting, related to the sworn officers. We have the community standards, not sworn department that's part of the Ann Arbor Police Department budget. And yeah, you just need to understand what's, at a high level, what is invested on staffing, training, community standards, and the sworn officers, equipment, all of those things. But it's going to take a while to, and I appreciate that Councilmember Graham reached out to Tom Crawford to inquire into arranging for this kind of budget work session, if you will, so that you are acquainted with the police department budget. But I think for now, I'd focus on the police department budget. The city budget's a bigger, plus, the city's going through a major league financial challenges right now. And, we just got a financial recovery plan update with yesterday's council agenda. And there's there's just, it's a moving target in ways that it wasn't in years past because of the pandemic. So for lots of reasons, I would focus on the police department budget.
Commissioner Caldwell, I saw your hand up. I do want to say that I was only engaged in conversations with about the police budget, but I do absolutely understand Commissioner Walton's point. The exact verbiage is look at the city's budget. And so we are very clear that that's the language that we saw. And I have only been engaged in conversations about the police budget. That is not to rule out anything else. Commissioner Caldwell.
And I do understand where Councilwoman Lum is coming from, but I do disagree that that's an unreasonable expectation to like look into the city's budget. Now, that's not something you're just going to tackle, you know, within the next 6 months, year, whenever. But back to the point that Chief Cox made, that some of these issues that we see that people may blame on the police may be bigger societal issues. And to the point of people using the term defunding the police, that's a term that means different things to different people. And it could mean reallocating resources. It could mean not necessarily adding a police position, but adding a position through the city that may address some address or equipped to address. So I don't think that I don't think it's unreasonable to speak on the city's budget as well.
Yeah, if I may, I think that's a good point, DeAndre. I'm just saying you can do that without having to understand the parks budget, the utilities department, transportation, the fleet, services unit. It's the city's budget is massive, and there are enterprise funds and on and on and on, capital improvement funds, and you don't have to get distracted by all of that other stuff. And you can, I think you could make sound recommendations on the police department budget and not get sidetracked into this other stuff.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Amiri has her hand up. I'm just going to say, I think that Commissioner Caldwell and others have a point. When people talk about defunding the police, one way to interpret that call is to reallocate resources to mental health services, to critical response teams, to other kinds of providers. And that would entail looking at some departments other than the police. And so I'm not sure that should we ever get to that point, not be a distraction. It would certainly be more work, but it wouldn't necessarily be a distraction or a detraction to do that. So I just want to say, we understand how unwieldy and complicated the city's budget might be. We also understand there are lots of experts who can help walk us through it. We're not talking about taking a deep dive into the city budget at this point, but I do want to make sure that I am that we are clear and that we're communicating as a group that certainly is not something outside the boundaries of what we were asked to do, but also could be something that might be necessary to do in the future. But we'll have to figure that out at some other point. So Commissioner Amiri,
last point.
Wait, let her go and then you can come back. Go, Anand.
I was thinking that, like, if you are thinking about, we are going to look at what Ann Arbor, public safety look like, and what is the perfect way to look what is the perfect police, and safety look like for a city this size and of Ann Arbor. There's a lot of work to be done. I mean, and in terms of, we look at the budget, how the Ann Arbor police budget is defined, what is their focus? Is there a different way to reallocate the same funds? Do they need more funds? But also, if we want to look at the city budget, we don't really have to look at everything in details as much as to look at the percentage of money of the city budget that go to the police. And if that's sufficient, it is too much, what are other cities in our comparison? So I think this is an opportunity for us to get involved in a more, constructive way in defining how the police should look like, rather than limit our work into the police, complaint against the police. But at the same time, we have to understand that if we to take that responsibility, we should demand from the city that we have staff. We can go and ask for some expertise from outside who have done this kind of work, to consult with them. So I am for doing that, and I'm for, you know, talking to the city in a serious way that, you know, we would like to take that responsibility, provided that we request that we get this kind of funding, for extra funding for the commission, and identify why do we need the extra funding, to consult with people, to look at other cities, and some staff to help us with that. I mean, all what we have is Denise, which is amazingly wonderful, but we share her with the Human Rights Commission. So that's what I suggest. Say yes.
Sorry.
Hold on. Council Member Romlawi, you are out of order.
I am, but I just need to correct her.
Councilmember Lum wanted to add something, so I heard it go. Jane, did you still have a comment there? Because you had your real hand up.
I think that, you know, maybe this could be part of the police department budget workshop orientation, whatever you're going to get. That there needs, I think, an understanding the budget development process would be helpful, because I don't think, if I'm a parks commissioner and we're having a couple meetings talking about the proposal for the park 21 or 22 fiscal year budget, and then the fiscal year 23 plan, because we're coming into a 2-year budget planning process. Or if I'm on planning and as a planning commissioner, just put the shoe on the other foot. We talk about the capital improvement plan and make recommendations, and then the capital improvement budget is not approved by planning commission, but by council. Anyway, there's a lot of in the weeds stuff about the whole process that I think would be a good thing for you to be briefed on. That's all.
Thank you. Ali?
Sorry to be out of order.
You are in so much trouble.
I just want to, respond and then expand on some things. But to say that Denise is being shared by the Human Rights Commission, I think is misunderstood. Denise's position was created for this commission,
right.
And what city administrator has done, and the previous one have tried to keep staff as busy as possible. So if this commission in its early months didn't have a full workload, so they were using Denise, and I apologize if I'm out of order, for other things to make sure that that full-time employee was busy. So, but if this commission gets to that point where there's work between that needs to be done for this commission or the Human Rights Commission, it's the work for this commission gets done first. This commission has precedent and has inside track when it comes to that. So I just want to make that very clear that we're not sharing Denise with the Human Rights Commission. When there's time for Denise or someone in her role to do work for other boards and commissions, then they're going to apply that person to that type of work, but only if there's not enough to keep them busy full time. So I just want to express that and make sure that it's clear, and we get that pounded into everybody's mindset, including up and down the organization. I think it's very important. I think when we're asking for resources, I think we need to have a work plan that's clearly defined, and we need to ask exactly what these resources are for, and have it very defined, and then ask for it then. But to ask for a blank check is not going to be met with very much reciprocity.
You know, we have never done that. We have not asked for it.
They're going to ask for very particulars. We're going to need to
happy to provide that.
Yes, and we have some excellent budget work people on this commission, and even a couple of us got trained this summer on the new budget prioritizing plan process. So, so we would not ask for a blank check. We would justify any ask, and we can speak to some of the things that are being asked of us. And I have spoken, just for clarity, to Tom Crawford, who's now no longer the interim city administrator, about Denise's role and her responsibilities. And so we expect that because of the increased workload that we're having, that it will be very imminent that they will have another person doing work for the Human Rights Commission. We'll let everybody know when that transition fully happens or whatever, but we have an awful lot of work to do, and we've been trying to do it all while she was gone, and it was not as graceful as it should have been because she wasn't here. And so now that she is here, unfortunately, we're probably working her to death, and she probably wants to quit the city of Ann Arbor. So, but we will keep everyone updated on that. Commissioner Othman.
Yeah, I think just looking at the future of the services the police is providing is what I see is probably going to be more of a comprehensive approach. And what I mean by a comprehensive approach is not only the police would be involved, but we're going to have social worker, we're going to have mental health specialists, we're going to have psychologists. And those ones, when the 911 call comes in, you have all those people available to respond to that call. And we try to minimize any kind of interactions with the police who might not be trained in these areas other than being on the police force and the training that they are getting over there and maintaining the order, et cetera, what they are doing in relation to, safety, et cetera. But I think what we need is we need to look at those aspects. Now, is it going to be done through the city, or is it going to be done through the county? We need to have something that would really change the attitude of the policing by also looking at our social and mental problems. Because we know that with mental and social problems, there were many unwanted outcomes that happen because of that. And unless we emphasize and put some resources into that and believe that this is also another venue we could look into to improve and to modernize and really look at issues, not just only from somebody violated the rules or so, but also somebody who did that because of mental illness or because of social status, or because of all those things. We have really to understand the subjects who are going to be receiving this kind of treatment, and know whether the budget is going to be somehow looked at or added more budget to it, added more individuals to it. Is it going to be done on the city level or higher level where all the communities can participate in that? This is something that we really have to keep an eye on for the future.
Absolutely. Commissioner Walton.
Does help if you unmute, doesn't it? Just with an eye on the clock, and realizing we're getting towards the end here, I did just want to make sure that as much as possible, we could kind of, even if it's just a thumbs up or a thumbs down from all the commissioners, make sure that Sarah and I are on the kind of right track with this. If so, then the next step really is that we would kind of flesh this out even a little bit further, get some next steps down, and then really have something that we could draft to give back to City Council as a proposal. And so, like I say, just wanted to, and our goal, our aim would be that we would have something that we could have the commission give their approval to, that could go to City Council at the next meeting. So this would mean us working on it in the meantime, getting out a draft, ideally more than 8 hours prior to the meeting in October, and then being able to actually move this forward to something that can go back to City Council after the next meeting.
So I'm happy to take note. Well, we also need to do one more thing before we sign off. We need to make sure we get a report. I believe that the outreach committee wanted to give us an update. However, so maybe the most expeditious thing is either if you have a thumbs up or a thumbs down, you can give it now. You can do that visually. Or if there are comments you want to add to this document, which has been sent to you, if you could add those comments and send it back to, I believe Jude and Sarah, you were both on the top of it. If you reply to that, it will go back to them. And if you could do that within a week, so by the 29th, if you could give whatever comments you have, additions, subtractions, even if it's broad ideas, if you give that back to them by the 29th, that would be really useful for them. I know all, 4 of us have been looking at the document over time, and so it would help them have an idea of, you know, where you'd like to go with this. And then they can kind of try to take these ideas and come back with something cohesive for us in October. Does that work for people?
Yes, for me.
Okay, so please reply to the email you got today that has this document in it. And then Commissioners Walton and Birch will continue their work and try to pull everybody's ideas together and figure out where we'd like to go from here. And then, you know, and I believe that the end goal of this is making a public safety resolution of our own. And so they would like to do that and get that out there and present that to council. So outreach committee, did you guys have a report? Is that Commissioner Birch or Amiri? Which one of you wanted to report out?
Andrew.
Okay.
I'll report out.
Okay.
So, we had the opportunity to meet earlier this month just to discuss how we'll go about doing outreach, even though that we're in a pandemic. So we put together a list of 13 agencies or religious groups, specific places that we want to reach out to during this time. And we thought it would be best to try to interact and produce like digital documents and just different ways that aren't in person to engage with them, to see how we can best partner with them to reach the people that they service. So we have an updated copy of the brochure that reflects Commissioner Carter and Commissioner Birch joining the commission. We also added our Twitter to the front cover of it. And after I'll talk to Denise about sending the new brochure out to everyone. And also we discussed coming up with a video that'll be narrated by Lisa, just describing, it'll be about a 2-minute video describing the commission's work and different people's roles. So it can also be something that when we're reaching out to these agencies, that we could send them the brochure and a video and just see whether they want to share that with their consumers or something that they can keep to share with people. And we also talked about translating the current brochure to Arabic and Spanish, just so that it's understandable for different people in our community.
Thank you so much for that. Thinking about translating it is wonderful because it's really important to be able to communicate with everybody where they are and make the effort to make sure that as many people as possible understand who we are and what we do. Commissioner Birch just got me the last revision of the video script today, so I will do it tomorrow and get that back to you guys. So I'm not the rate limiting factor there. It is 3.5 minutes though, because I timed it, so it's not 2 minutes. That's not my fault. You guys have long attributes. Denise, can you tell if anybody called back for public comment or?
No, I don't see anyone presently.
Okay. Councilmember Lum.
Sorry, I have one communication, if I may. And it's just an information item for everyone. Today, one of a committee I serve on, it's called the Policy Agenda Committee. It's a council committee. So there's no citizens appointed to this committee. The Policy Agenda Committee is a relatively new committee. It's been in existence for about 2 years. And it's the committee that reviews state and federal legislation and makes recommendations to the city council. And then city council formally adopts, approves recommendations regarding legislation on various topics that are important to the city, topics like, you know, zoning, land development, everything from fireworks to the environment, telecommunications, you name it. And every year now, we've done this just twice really, the Policy Agenda Committee creates a fiscal year agenda. And this agenda includes a framework for policies that the city would like to monitor and advocate, support, oppose, recommendations regarding, again, various forms of legislation. So at today's Policy Agenda Committee, I looked over this. We were provided the fiscal year 2020 agenda, and we started talking about the 21 agenda, which will be assembled in December for fiscal year 21. And I looked over this, and there are no statements about legislation regarding policing, anything related to policing. And so I said I would bring this up at the ICPOC meeting tonight, just to make you aware of this. Just before the meeting, I sent Lisa and Francis a note about this. I also attached a copy of the city's fiscal year 2020 policy agenda. You feel free, if you want to forward that note to ICPOC. And I wanted to let you know, I asked what the deadline would be for providing feedback to this committee. It was recommended that ICPOC's recommendations on what you would like the city to monitor, advocate in terms of legislation that supports, best policing guidelines should be provided to the Policy Agenda Committee through Assistant City Administrator John Fournier in early December. So you probably want to make this an agenda item for your next meeting.
Thank you. That dovetails nicely. I had a meeting with Stephanie Chang today, who with Jeff Irwin serve on the Senate Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. And so we were able to talk about some legislation that they're working through at the state level regarding policing and public safety. So it would be great to have that conversation with the commission and think about things that we'd like to focus on and advocate for in 2021. So thank you for that. That's my alarm. It's time to go. Sorry. Right at 8 o'clock. Is there anything else, any other communication that we need to raise at this point? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, guys. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.